Hello, and welcome back to the 5-Cent Cigar Newscast. I'm Alexa Potamianos. Thank you so much for joining us. Coming up this week, a look into the housing waitlist for upperclassmen students, then the university's effort for inclusivity through pronoun and gender identity markers on E-campus. Lastly, the impact of poetry on the URI community during National Poetry Month. And as always, make sure to stick around for your Rhody Sports Corner. Housing and residential life is currently facing an issue with campus housing for upperclassmen. With over 800 students on the waitlist, the demand for housing is the highest it has been within the past few years. I spoke with Director of Housing and Residential Life, Frankie Miner, to find out more. The University of Rhode Island is currently facing a capacity issue for upperclassmen students. I talked to Director of Housing and Residential Life, Frankie Miner, to find out more.
For the first time in many years, there is a higher demand for housing than we have supply. For many years, URI responded to that by tripling up first-year students. More than 70% of our first-year students would be in triple rooms. That allows us to accommodate all the upperclassmen. However, while we were looking at trying to reduce that number, COVID made us reduce it all at once. We lost over 900 spaces all at once that are not really going to come back for a variety of reasons, which we don't have anymore. So right now we've got a number of students. We started with a little over 800 students on our wait list who want to live on campus, or at least think they want to live on campus, than we currently have space for. We're right in the middle of our room selection process. That wraps up tomorrow, trying to get all those students who have the opportunity to participate assigned to their particular spaces. And then we're going to update our students on the wait list with changes in the position.
Miner gives more insight into what a student should do if they are further down on the wait list.
Encourage them to maintain contact with us. Like I said, we're going to send out one update next week after we finished up the room assignment process. We'll do another update shortly before the semester ends on their status. But it's really up to each individual student and family at what point do they try to seek alternative housing that may be less desirable or potentially less convenient for them versus trying to get something here on campus. Like I said, they can stick with us as long as we can. Historically, we've been able to accommodate all students who stayed with us on the wait list, but that's when we had about 500 on the wait list, and some of those weren't accommodated up until the first few days of classes. The other option is if some of our returning students are local and have the ability to commute or have alternative housing for the first couple of weeks of the fall semester, we always have some space that opens up.
Alexa Potamianos, 5-Cent Cigar News. This month, URI released new name, pronoun, and gender identity markers on eCampus, allowing students to indicate their first names on the platform. This comes as a big step for the university's effort to create a more inclusive environment for students who identify as members of the LGBTQ+ community. Imani Fleming spoke with the director at the Gender and Sexuality Center to learn more about what this means for the URI community and the origin of the outdated terms.
A chosen name option and other new identifier settings are now available on URI's E-campus website. URI faculty and students will have the option to specify pronouns and gender identity, something Dr. Annie Russell says didn't happen overnight.
Exciting that we've been able to do this. It was a long and frustrating process at times. In the first 2 years that I was here, so by 2014, we had created the quote preferred name process, which of course is outdated language now, and we know names are not preferred, they're just names, right? And so, but at the time, that was kind of the language that was in the community. So we created that process where students could, for the first time, go into their e-campus and indicate an alternate first name. And that first name would show up all over campus, basically. So places, like health services and res life and dining and the library and your student ID and all of those kinds of things. And we had some battles in that, I'll be very honest.
She explains why the new features carry so much weight and what they mean for many URI students.
Once in a day, it may be like a pinprick, right? But when it happens to you over and over and over throughout your day, as you navigate our university campus community, what happens is by the end of the day, you're bleeding out. right? All of those pinpricks catch up.
A vision since her arrival to URI 10 years ago, the identifiers are a historic win for URI's LGBTQ+ community.
You can now go in to your E-campus and indicate a first name, middle, and last name. So you can change any of your names. It doesn't have to be just the first name. That's one of the critical pieces of this, right? Because you know, people get married, people publish under different names. There are all kinds of reasons that people would need to indicate a different last name.
According to Russell, next steps involve connecting the Oracle PeopleSoft system to each major department on campus and their corresponding websites.
And we have gender inclusive options on that now. So mix, MX, is the gender inclusive kind of prefix. That is on there too, so you can request that. And you can indicate for the very first time your legal gender, and we wanted that language to be that way for a particular reason, right? You can indicate your gender identity, sexual orientation, and pronouns.
Russell says these new functions are a telling sign of the hard work that lies ahead to ensure total inclusivity on URI's campus.
And every day that a student gets to be affirmed for exactly who they are in our campus community means that they feel a sense of belonging.
Since 1996, the month of April has been recognized as National Poetry Month. Liz Fusco and Maddie Bataille spoke with members of the URI community to see the impact poetry has on students at the university.
Since 1996, April has been recognized as National Poetry Month, established by the Academy of American Poets.
The Academy hopes that the month will remind the public of the integral role poetry plays in society and culture.
For more on the role of poetry at URI, Talvi Ansel, professor of English and Writing and Rhetoric, spoke with us about her experience.
I think poems are just these marvelous little packets of possibility, and there's so much that can happen in them. There's just, so much opportunity and ways that they approach the world, give us glimpses of the world. And some poems will start with just an observation or an element of sound that I like. There's usually a pretty strong sense of location, natural world in my poems. I think it's nice just to take a moment and kind of recognize how essential poetry is.
URI students tell us more about how they view poetry.
I'm trying to think of my favorite poem. I think it's called Love Looks Pretty on You. It's from a book. Also anything by Orion Carlotto has been really good. She recently released a poetry book called Film for Her, and I consumed that in 2 hours.
I did not know that it was National Poetry Month. And I'm not really into poetry, but I did take introductory to literature last semester, and we did read a lot of poems, and I did enjoy the discussions about them, because I feel like no matter what you read, everybody kind of has a different perspective on it.
I did Roman mythology, so we read the Iliad, we read the Golden Ass. Film, I think, is definitely, its intent would make it poetry. Dolly Parton has some amazing storytelling as well, maybe Glenn Campbell. Yeah, country music especially is, I would say, old country. It's very poetic.
Maddie Bataille
And Liz Fusco for 5 Cent Cigar News.
Now over to Zach Austin for your Rhody Sports Corner.
Thanks, Alexa. Hello and welcome back to another edition of your Rhody Sports Corner. For the past 5 decades, Mick Westcott has coached URI's swimming and diving program. On March 30th, the longtime coach announced that he'll move on to start the next stage of his life. Our own Aniekan Okon sat down with him to talk about what the program means to him and what's next.
I didn't want to let it go.
For the last 50 years, Mick Westcott has coached the swimming and diving team. Last month, he called it a career, leaving with 349 wins as the school's longest tenured coach.
This department is a great department to work in. It grabs you, and I guess you don't know your life without it. So why think about going someplace else?
One of the people to help create that environment was the late Ellie Lemire, who helped get the women's program started back in 1976.
She was just dynamite in both promoting the sport, or promoting women in sports, but also engaging the staff.
The reins will officially be handed over to Lily Deering, who was coached by Westcott and has worked with him for the past 6 seasons.
I've got some big shoes to fill. I'm gonna miss seeing him every day, but I mean, I know where he lives, and I know I can give him a call anytime I need to.
I think the future is really, really strong, and I'm just excited to watch it. And I won't be too far away, but far enough so Lily knows it's her gig, not mine.
And in terms of what's next for Westcott?
Still formulating. The one thing I do want to do is I want to write, and if I can have the discipline to write about the 50 years. I've collected so many memorabilia that I'm going to sort through that and talk to a number of people who've gone through this, and they say it takes time to figure it out.
Reporting from the Tutel Aquatic Center, I'm Aniakan Okon, 5 Cent Cigar Sports.
Men's lacrosse was back in action last Thursday, looking to take their 3rd win in a row against the Yukon Huskies on senior night. With more on how the team did, here's Aiden Garvey.
URI's men's lacrosse team had a tough game ahead of them as they hosted the Division I Yukon Huskies in a battle under the lights last Thursday night. Yukon jumped out to a fast 1-0 lead with this goal from Jack Toisignant. However, it was Hunter LaFrance of URI putting them up 9-8 early in the 3rd quarter. Yukon, however, delivered the final blow. A fast break goal from Matt Stevenson shut the door. Yukon walked out of Kingston with a 15-12 win.
After starting the series back in March, softball hosted UMass on Tuesday for their 3rd and final matchup of the season. After being off for the last week, the Rams hope to use this rest to their advantage and avoid the series sweep.
It was all UMass to start this one, with the Minutewomen leading 4-0 midway through the 4th. But the Rams got some life when Ari Castillo hit this one right through the middle of the field to send Leila Alvarez home for Rhodey's first run of the day. The Rams then exploded in the 5th. At the plate this time, Alvarez pushes yet another shot towards the middle, giving time for both Skylar Rapuano and Rachel Zingerman to score. Rhody cuts the deficit to just 1. A couple at-bats later, Castillo does it again. This time, she fires this one into the outfield for her 7th double of the year to help Alvarez pick up her 2nd run of the afternoon. Rams tied up at 4 apiece. But UMass bounced back when it mattered most. After a Taylor Richardson go-ahead run at the top of the 7th, Bella Bantoja drops this one in the left field, leaving enough time to drive home Kendra Allen and Christina Day to stretch the lead to 3. The Minutewomen would hold on, adding 2 more runs to secure the series sweep. 9-4 is the final.
And let's take a look at the rest of your scores around Kingston. Men's track and field finished 2nd out of 20 teams at the Northeast Challenge in Stores. The women's team finished 4th at that same meet. The Rhody men's basketball team landed their first recruit of the Archie Miller era. Former George Washington guard Brayon Freeman committed to the Rams this past weekend. Freeman was named to the A10 All-Rookie team last season and has 3 years of eligibility remaining. And congrats to baseball's Addison Kopak and Eric Genther, as well as Colin Oakes and Jack Reichenbach. Kopak won A10 Player of the Week and Genther repeated as Rookie of the Week. Oakes took home Track Performer of the Week, while Reichenbach was the A10's Field Performer of the Week. That's it for this week's Rhody Sports Corner. Back to you.
That's all we have for
won
you this
A10
week at the
Rookie
5
of the
Cent
Week,
Cigar
Former of the Week,
Newscast.
while Reichenbach
As
was
always,
the
make sure to
A10's
check
Field
us out at
Performer of the Week.
RhodyCigar.com.
That's it for this week's
and
Rhody
follow
Sports
us on
Corner.
Twitter at
Kopak won
RhodyCigar.
A10
From
as Rookie
Kingston,
of the Week,
Rhode Island,
Former of the
I'm
Week, while
Alexa
Reichenbach was
Potamianos.
the A10's
Stay
Field
safe,
Performer of
Rhody.
the Week.